Thank you very much for sitting down with us again. You talk about your brother John.
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit more about him?
He's amazing, like, I meant that. Even though we're 8 years apart, he's my protector. And he was my gut check person. I will never forget, like, he would always be on me about enjoying life. This is the thing that I really appreciated about him, is that he forced me to rethink my priorities. I'll never forget, it was one day I flew home, just to visit family, and he was like, you out here doing all these different things, and it's like, but he was like, you don't stop to enjoy none of it. So he was just very wise. And even in his passing, because the particular situation that happened that led to his death was that they were at a young friend's house, a young woman in the neighborhood. And we found out during the trial that the young man who was her ex-partner and the father of her children, he had been abusing this girl since like 2008. And she even admitted during the trial that she wanted to get out of the relationship, but everybody was telling her to stay in it for the children. When her ex broke into the house, like guns blazing, John even tried to talk him down. And I was like, he came here and do what he needed to do.
Thank you shown us more, for people who didn't know him and maybe don't know you, more of why his loss was so particularly tragic for everybody.
And you know what? I intentionally kept that out of the talk about it being domestic violence, about him being pretty much an innocent bystander, because I was like, I wonder what people are going to think. Because I was like, I wonder, for some people that will sanitize him, to say that he's a victim that we feel okay with having sympathy for. Because I really wanted people to sit with probably what their own isms and assumptions are, and to say, let me go look at this case for myself. Or were they going to criminalize my brother in their mind?
You ask a lot of questions about siblings' roles after something like this happens. Do you have answers yet for any of your questions?
You have studies like the ACEs study, the Early Childhood Adversity study, which Nadine Burke-Harris actually did her TED Talk on, I believe about a year or two ago, for TED Med. And even she admitted that, they don't even look at that as a metric. And nobody probably knows about this because they haven't experienced it. Had I not experienced the death of 2 siblings, I wouldn't know the different layers of what siblings go through. And to say that, wait a second, we're not paying attention to this, and oh, look at that suicide rate. Perhaps if we look at that suicide rate and we peel back the layers a little more, how many siblings who have lost their siblings to violent crime are the ones taking themselves out? How many of our children, with our 70% dropout rate, are the ones who are siblings or effective kinship siblings to somebody who was taken from a violent crime, and you just can't pull it together, so you drop out? I'm an adult, and I tapped out after the trial for my brother's murder. I had to give myself permission to say, you know what? We got to let some things go. We need to take some time. We need to start thinking about all these public health issues, right? Because that whole thing, I have never been a cutter in my life, ever. And I was standing in my mother's bedroom, like straight up. Because I think I was more shocked at myself. And then I was super shocked that I was telling my damn mom. I was just like, and my mother was just like, and I knew it hurt her. But she was even like, this is something that we're going to have to live with, and it's going to hurt. And you're going to have to accept it. It's going to hurt. I was in such denial of wanting it to hurt as bad as it hurt, because my brother's death is the only thing that has ever brought me to my knees. Only thing. So when I started to even look at my own self and what I was going through, I was just like, and I'm looking at my community, and I'm like, people need to have the radar on siblings. It's like we are probably the missing link. And that's why I ended, my talk with saying, what if? Especially with all of the PhDs who are in the audience, all the different psychologists and stuff, like to say, let's think about this. Because what if, this sibling piece, the ones who kind of are caught in the middle but actually are overlooked, folks are just like, how are you doing? And then before I can finish a sentence, folks are like, how are your parents? And then to me, that communicates that my pain and my suffering and what I'm actually enduring probably isn't that significant, or people probably know how hard that is and they don't want to be with that pain. Even dealing with that layer of people kind of this erasure that happens verbally on asking you how you're doing. It's just like, please sit with the fact that we're just not this middle person who translates.
As someone who has had to go through this twice and with some time, what would you tell people who want to be with someone who's going through this? What's helpful?
Allow the person to talk it out. And then also allow the person to be just fully human, not to get over it as quickly. Some people have these assumptions, like after a certain amount of time, you're okay, or you exhibit this great understanding. So it's just like, oh, so you're okay, right? Now that because you're able to talk about it. And it's like, no, like, no, that's part of the living piece. That's part of being a living, breathing human being, is that we have to talk the trauma out. And to know that sometimes things will happen that might seem totally irrational, but are very real, emotional, and mental triggers for people. I have received a lot of compassion from strangers. Because I was on the bus one day, and a young man, like, I got on the bus and I looked at the back of the bus and like almost jumped. I think I did. He looked exactly like my brother. And I just sat down and I kept trying not to stare at him. And my eyes just welled up. Like, I couldn't hold it in. And I just went to him and I said, I'm so sorry. I was like, but you look just like my brother. And, he passed away over a year. And he was like, it's all right, sister, and just hugged me real tight. And he was like, well, if you want to, I can be your brother for this little bit, while we on the bus. And he just had the biggest smile. And that was the other thing about my brother. Crazy beautiful smile. Just in this laugh. Oh my God, you could hear him laugh like all through the house. And it just lifted. And I do have a pretty serious personality type. But I would hear my brother laugh and I would just lose it. I was just, because we have a lot of goofy people in our family. And I am goofy on the side of being, outside of being really serious. But his laugh would just shake whatever it was off of me.
Is there something that you would want to tell people who have just lost a sibling really recently?
You don't have to be them. You don't have to replace them. It's impossible. Because I think that's one of the main reasons why I was just like, well, let me do some of the things that John did with Mom. And it's like, you can't do that. It's not the same. Like my mom had a certain relationship with my brother. And, and definitely with our dad, my brother and dad were just reforming their relationship. And that's why it hurts me so much about our dad. There was forgiveness that was there. And then it's like it's gone. Like you don't get to live the next chapter. Like what does life look like after forgiveness with a parent? Because I think our parents' divorce really took a toll on our brother. Well, it did. It took a toll on all of us. With the murder of John, I'm not going to lie. I told God, I was like, I'm not talking to you. And I even told my best friend's mom, I was like, I'm angry at God right now. And she was the first person who was like, and that's okay. And I was like, thank you. Because I didn't think that I had the right to do that. But yeah, that's another thing I will tell siblings. You're going to go, your faith is going to be challenged. There are going to be things that one thinks and does that might be totally out of character, and build a support system so you don't spiral. Thankfully, I have friends who are mental and emotional health professionals and who forced me to create a protocol. And that helped me, but I realized I'm in a very privileged position with that, to have friends who are mental health professionals. So I would definitely say just build that network of support, and to know that, yes, life is going to be different. It's going to be really different.
How did it change the way you approached your work? And
I wouldn't necessarily change the way I approached my work. It changed where my focus really is. I had to do more important things. I was already cause-oriented working, in the ad industry. That's where I found the most joy and fulfillment in my work. I was already putting my first collection of poetry together before my brother transitioned. However, his transition made me focus. Because actually, my book saved my life. It saved my sanity. It gave me something to focus on. So the way that my brother's death has impacted me in regards to my work, it's forced me to shift to taking my life as a writer and a poet more seriously. Then also making me get serious about going back to school to finish my degree in cultural anthropology and psychology. And I've always had, this fascination with how trauma changes the way we tell stories. Like what's missing from, our collective story and our individual stories because of trauma that we possibly endured. And taking my area of interest and then saying, no, I'm not going to allow this trauma to shut me down. I'm going to write about it. I'm going to document it. And I'm going to be okay with that. So it changed more of my focus in my work as a writer and a storyteller, but not necessarily the work itself. Mm. Yeah.
How do you think trauma impacts the way we tell stories?
Oh, God. A lot of editing. And actually, I became interested in that area because of the older people in my family. A lot of old Black folks who came up from the South will not talk about the South. They will not talk about what they've endured, and what they left behind, why they left. Because I'm pretty sure my grandmother died at the beautiful age of 93. But there were things she just would not talk about. I mean, she grew up in the Gulf. She grew up in Alabama. So So she would just say, you know what, let's think of happier things.
How has it changed the way you tell stories?
Giving myself more permission just to tell the full truth. I did not want to go into all those details, but I felt like if I did not go into all those details, because no, I don't want to relive the moment where I saw that picture of my brother in the morgue. But for people to understand what we truly endure, I couldn't edit that piece out, because those are the realities of trial. Standing up, reading a victim impact statement in the court, and the person who took your brother's life is right there too. And his family and our family and, you know, all of that. Yeah, I had to be honest about the fact that I was getting ready to take a knife to my body. Because how dare I not be honest about that? Be more trauma sensitive. Just don't brush it. Just don't brush it off in a way. You know, really, really be more compassionate about what all someone may be experiencing or going through, and not to say that you have to go all Dr. Phil, you know, on somebody. But it's like, yeah, just be more trauma informed when you walk through the world. As the old saying goes, you know, people are fighting battles that we have no knowledge of, so let's be gentle with one another.
That's a really good, nice idea. Thank you very, very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.